Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and in today's video I have the Game Week 10 transfer plans where I share with you guys what I intend to do with my team going into the Game Week 10 deadline. If you guys do enjoy this one, please do drop a like, please do subscribe as well. And before we jump into the video, I do have to apologize for the lack of content over the past few days because I was traveling, but I'm now back with my usual setup, and the videos on the channel will also be back, starting with today's transfer plans video. So as usual, we'll go through how I did in Game Week 9, my scores, as well as my thoughts surrounding the players that I have, and thereafter take a look at my Game Week 10 plans as well. So in Game Week 9, a very tiny red arrow down to 273k in the world, 64 points that I scored, which was 10 points above the average. I'm happy enough with the performance and also a couple of decisions that I made before the Game Week 9 deadline. So those of you who followed the Game Week 9 deadline stream, you would remember that there was a key decision that I had to make before the deadline, which was who to sell Son for, or even whether I should keep Son and bench him and thereafter make a transfer elsewhere as well. So just to kind of reiterate, the initial plan that I had was actually to do Havertz to Vissa, assuming that Son was fit. This was before the Game Week 9 deadline, and thereafter, because Son wasn't fit and he was unlikely to play when Ange Postecoglou gave the press conference, I thereafter decided to keep Havertz instead. I couldn't move for Vissa, and thereafter I did Son to Palmer, and Palmer went on to get 10 points. So overall, when I compare these two moves, I don't think there's too much difference in terms of the points I would have scored. But also, I think moving forward, there are implications now that Son is no longer in my team. I had a look at the Game Week 11 fixtures as well, where I know Son is a very big captaincy shout against Ipswich. So not having Son for that game week, I will probably need to find another captaincy option within my team for Game Week 11. But that said, when I look at the kind of Vissa versus Palmer move as well, I'm more likely, the main reason why I decided to move for Palmer instead was, firstly, I'm more likely to have Palmer for a longer period of time in my team as I am to Vissa. And now that I haven't gone for Vissa, I think Havertz Acuna, as I'll talk about more in the Game Week 10 transfer plan section, is more a move that I'm considering for an even longer term. So those are kind of the main decisions that I had before the Game Week 9 deadline. I moved Palmer, he got 10 points. Could have walked away with a lot more as well. A lot of the other players in my team also did pretty well. Players like Wood, special mention to him, he's done really well. Scored 2 goals against Leicester. And he was one of the main picks on the Game Week 6 wildcard that I got correct. So I'm happy to be on this side of the coin, because I do know that Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who was also a very big, kind of a cheap forward shout in Game Week 6 on a wildcard, hasn't worked out really well. So I'm happy to be on this side of the coin. Chris Wood moving forward will likely still be in my team, but I do have a couple of plans to ship him out in Game Week 12 or Game Week 13 once their fixtures start to turn. So moving forward, he'll still be in my team. He's still in very good form. Happy enough to have Chris Wood. Other notable mentions as well. Haaland got a goal against Southampton. Mbumo, 15 points against Ipswich. Really good performance from him. Continues to take along as one of the best value assets at the price point that he's at. Lewis finally got a clean sheet for Man City. And when you look at the other defenders as well, they all didn't do very well. I think Flecken has been absolutely disappointing, mainly because this was the Ipswich game where I decided to start him instead of Verbruggen. Of course, Verbruggen didn't keep a clean sheet against Wolves, but the way that Brentford defended against Ipswich just really did not give me a lot of confidence that moving forward in the next few game weeks, where I'll still need to keep playing Flecken because Verbruggen will have difficult fixtures, that it's not great. I don't think there will be many clean sheets for Flecken, so I'm waiting for Verbruggen's fixture to turn from Game Week 12 onwards, and that's likely when I will start Verbruggen instead. Just specifically for Game Week 9 though, Verbruggen also didn't do very well, where Wolves scored 2 goals against Brighton in the last few minutes. So I do think that comes down to a little bit of complacency as well, and also looking at the way they conceded the Cunha equalizer. They were actually 4-1 on the other end on a counter-attack. They lost the ball, and thereafter Wolves launched their own counter-attack and scored. So I do think Brighton were kind of a little bit sloppy towards the end of the game. But in terms of looking at the Brighton defense as well as the Brentford defense, I still back the Brighton one a little bit more. So I will be waiting for Brighton's fixtures to turn, and thereafter I can start benching Flecken again. So mainly these are the kind of decisions that I had for Game Week 9 as well as how my team performed. Let's have a look now at the Game Week 10 transfer plans for my team. So going into game week 10, this is how my team looks like without any transfers made so far. I have 0.8 million in the bank and I have one free transfer. So talking a bit about my transfer situation this whole season so far, I haven't really found myself in a situation where I have 2 to 3 rolled transfers and thereafter I can make huge structural changes to my team. I think so far I've always used the free transfer that I've had, mainly because I wanted to jump on certain assets or due to injuries, etc. But yeah, I just realized this about my own team where I haven't really had rolled transfers. But moving forward as well, I think there will start to be structural changes to my team where I do intend to sell Haaland. It's a bit of a spoiler for the next section. I won't be selling him now in game week 10 specifically, but I think looking ahead into the next few game weeks, there will be game weeks where I don't think Haaland is the best captain, in which case I think I could go without Haaland for a certain period of time. So I will share that in the next tinkering section. But for now in game week 10, looking at my kind of situation here with the starting 11, I think on first look, you don't really see many pressing issues in that I don't really need to make a transfer, but yet I still want to make a transfer, so I'll speak about that as we go along. So in goal, I have Flecken ahead of Verbruggen. This one is the Fulham away fixture for Flecken, and Verbruggen plays Liverpool, so obviously we'll be starting Flecken here, but I'll be honest, I'm not expecting too much from Brentford's defense. In defense, it's also Trent, Lewis and Aina, and Gabriel's first on the bench and Greaves is injured who's last on the bench. So I did have a bit of a benching headache, I would say, before Gabriel got injured, where I also don't mind playing Newcastle away for Gabriel. But looking at the way he went off in game week 9 against Liverpool, he couldn't even make the 60th minute. I think he came off in the 58th minute. And there was a bit of concern around his injury. So he went straight down the tunnel. He was holding onto his knee. And thereafter, when he came out, he came back to sit on the bench. There was an ice pack on his knee. So I think we don't really know too much yet. My guess is that it's not too serious. I don't think it would keep him out for super long. But I think it's a possibility that he misses out in game week 10. In which case, it also saves me a bit of a benching headache because I am perfectly fine playing Trent, Lewis and Aina with the fixtures that they have. So Gabriel's first on the bench there. It's just something to consider as well is that I know Lewis is not nailed to start by any means. So say for example, Lewis does not start, my defense could be in quite a dire situation where Greaves is injured as well, so he's a non-option, and Gabriel, if he misses out against Newcastle, I could pretty much be playing with one less player because no defenders would sub in for Lewis. So not ideal, and something I will continue to monitor, as well as the Gabriel news that we hear later on in the week that will continue to affect my decision. For now, it's these three in defense. In midfield is Mbumo, Johnson, Rogers and Palmer. So for Mbumo and Palmer, they have been taking along very nicely, so I'm perfectly happy with both of them. It's the middle two here, Johnson and Rogers, that are a bit of a concern for me. Not so much that I need to sell them, but I think I need to monitor their performances moving forward and see if they are the ones I need to start selling. So Johnson against Aston Villa here at home. In game week 9, remember that Spurs didn't do very well against Crystal Palace, and they have started to look a little bit less of a potent attack than they were the weeks before. Not that my impression of them changes drastically, especially in game week 11 where they have Ipswich. I still intend to keep Johnson, but I think it's just a bit of a correction on my own thinking where Spurs are also capable of underperforming in some games and only putting up 0.72 xg against Crystal Palace, who are a team that really haven't done very well this season, was quite worrying. So I will continue to monitor Spurs' performance moving forward. Now, as for Rogers, he has Tottenham away here, so he's playing in the same game as Johnson. And Rogers was a player that was substituted early in game week 9, but I'm not too worried about that because I think it largely came down to the amount of minutes he's been playing recently when you add Champions League in the mix as well, where actually midweek Rogers played really well and supplied an assist to John Duran. I do think he's still playing at a very high level, and I think was still one of the regular starter for Unai Emery's side. I just do think there may be certain or at least more frequent substitutions for him towards the later half of the games. I don't think as early as 58 minute, but I do think like 70 to kind of 80th minute substitutions for him could be possible moving forward with the frequency of games that they're going to play, and also some players coming back from injury that would allow Rodgers to take a bit more of a break. So I do think like that is something I want to monitor moving forward, but definitely in terms of what he offers at that price point, I'm still happy enough to have him. So Rodgers here against Tottenham away. Now up front, it's Havertz, Haaland and Chris Wood. I'll speak about the yellow flag on Chris Wood first. I don't think this one will stay on him. I do think like towards the game week 10 deadline that it will be removed, because he had a press conference after the game against Leicester and he did say that it was simply a small knock, and he should be fine for the game against West Ham. So I don't think he is too much of an issue. I'm still fine to have him here. Haaland against Bournemouth away, happy enough to still keep him. I know this is a week that many people are thinking you should sell Haaland here and start to bring players like Salah in, but for my own team, I'm really not in a rush to get rid of Haaland. I'm happy enough to play him against Bournemouth away, and I will have plans to jump onto other assets like Salah, for example, that people are selling Haaland for come the time Salah's fixtures are good enough, and I'll show that later on. So Havertz, the last player here, Newcastle away. This is the one that I want to spend a bit more time on. He is the player that I think moving forward, at least from game week 12 or 13 onwards, I don't think he is in my thinking as the three Arsenal assets that I would want from game week 12 or 13 onwards. I do think, contrary to I think what a lot of people are going to go for, that then would be the time for the double Arsenal defense. Now I know recently they haven't been playing very well. They didn't keep a clean sheet against teams like Bournemouth, Leicester, Southampton. But I do look at the fixtures moving forward, and in the long term, I still do think once Saliba and Gabriel are both fit, assuming from game week 12, 13 onwards, that is still where I would want to go. In which case, I think the only Arsenal attacker that I would want is Saka. So I think selling Havertz makes sense, especially now in game week 10 where they have Newcastle away. Not typically a very difficult fixture, but thereafter in game week 11 they also have Chelsea. Not that I think Havertz can't score in those two games, but I think going for someone like Cunha could outscore Havertz, and overall in the long term, I would still want Cunha as well. So I go a little bit earlier here, saves me a little bit more money as well, because I assume that in 2 game weeks time, Cunha would have also risen in price. So I'm fine to, I guess, make a little bit of a luxury transfer, because I don't think Havertz to Cunha is again a move that I must make. And if I do make that move and use my one free transfer on that, my defense will be in a bit of an issue. So Trent, Lewis and Aina, I have to be certain that they will all start before I can actually make this Havertz to Cunha move. So I will be keeping a close watch on the AFL Cup games midweek, and also the press conferences leading up to the game week 10 deadline that will largely influence my transfers this week. But all else staying the same, if everyone goes according to my own kind of interpretation of the minutes as well as the recovery process for them, for example Gabriel as well as Chris Wood, then I do think like Havertz to Cunha is the most likely move I will make in game week 10. So just to share a bit of my transfer plans beyond game week 10, assuming now in game week 10 I go ahead and make the Havertz to Cunha move, let me just go ahead and lock it in right now. Then I will have quite a bit of money in the bank, and that will come in quite handy when you look at the transfers that I intend to make after that. So Cunha in for Havertz will leave me with 2.4 million in the bank. Come game week 11, I will have a situation where I don't think I need to use a transfer, so I can roll the transfer in game week 11 and go with something that looks like this. So Flecken has Bournemouth, Trent has Aston Villa, Lewis has Brighton, and then Aina has Newcastle. So I probably can go with Gabriel here instead. Now, assuming obviously that he's back in time. Now in midfield, it's Palmer, Mbumo, Johnson and Rodgers. This is the week where Johnson has Ipswich, so Spurs has the Ipswich game. This is the one where I need to look for another captaincy option. Probably someone like Haaland against Brighton, because Palmer has Arsenal. And thereafter, you look at Rodgers having Liverpool as well. This is when I would play Semenyo against Brentford. Something that is also playing in the back of my mind is that Semenyo is on 4 yellow cards at the moment. So if he's not, or if he's suspended for game week 11, basically, if he's not able to play, then this will be a bit of an issue where this rotation could not work out, right? But fingers crossed that he's fine for game week 11. Brentford away for him, he comes in instead of Rodgers, who has Liverpool away. And then up front, it's perfectly fine. Haaland against Brighton, Cunha against Southampton, and Wood against Newcastle. So this would be something that I go with for game week 11 without any transfers made. And then come game week 12, this is when I would have 2 free transfers, and also the time when I would make a structural change to my team. And it's mainly because Erling Haaland here will start to have a tricky fixture run. It's Spurs at home, then Liverpool away, Nottingham Forest at home, Crystal Palace away, Manchester United at home. Now, realistically speaking, I would say that there are many fixtures within this run that I wouldn't want to captain Haaland in. For example, Spurs and Liverpool, I don't think they are games I would want to captain Haaland in. Nottingham Forest have been defending pretty well this season. I don't expect it to be a very high scoring game for Man City. Crystal Palace arguably could be a side that maybe Man City would score a couple of goals against, but you just saw them win Spurs 1-0. And then Manchester United at home as well. So I do think, like, in general, maybe I won't add Manchester United into the fixtures where it's difficult for them. Maybe that's an easier one for them. But aside from that, my point is that I don't think I'll be captaining Haaland that much. In which case, I can, from game week 12, sell Haaland. So the plan here is to sell Haaland for Welbeck. Now, Welbeck is someone that has been ticking along very nicely. Of course, assuming João Pedro is not back by then as well. And obviously, from game week 12 onwards is when Brighton have a really good fixture run moving forward, starting with Bournemouth away. 13 it's Southampton, in 14 it's Fulham, 15 it's Leicester, and 16 it's Crystal Palace at home. So really good fixtures for him. He obviously frees up so much money so that I can do Johnson to Salah. And the main reason why I'm selling Johnson here is because this is also the start of Spurs' tough fixture run that begins with Man City away. So Salah comes in here, I'll make the transfers. I will have lots of money left in the bank as well, 5.6 million, but this would be used to bring Bukayo Saka back into the team. So from game week 12, with 2 transfers made, it's probably Welbeck in for Haaland and then Johnson out for Salah. So now that these 2 transfers have been made, lots of money in the bank, come game week 13, I can do either one of Rodgers or Semenyo to Saka. So by then, I think lots of things would have changed. I don't intend to plan so far, but there are kind of structural changes to my team that I am planning for, and I wanted to show it to you guys as well. So come maybe game week 12 onwards, I won't have Haaland, and I'll be shifting more towards a 3 premium midfield in Palmer, Salah, and Saka. So coming back now to game week 10, you would see here that this Cunha move as well starts to free up a lot of money so that later on down the line, I can just very simply do either one of Semenyo or Rodgers to Saka, right? And that sets up my 3 premium midfielders. But if not now in game week 10, the Cunha in for Havertz move is the only one I'm considering. Let me know in the comments down below if I'm sleeping on any other players that I should consider, and also what moves you guys are making for your own teams as well. Drop it in the comments down below, as well as any questions that you have, and I'll answer as many as I can. If not, thank you for watching to this point. And again, the content will start to pick up for game week 10. I apologize for the lack of content over the past few days, but we're back. Transfer plans here in game week 10. Tomorrow will be transfer tips. Day after will be the wild card. And on Thursday will be team selection. So stay tuned for lots of content this week. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.